Fedora 41 beta is released, so let us have a look to the new version. How is it using Fedora, and for which persons I would recommend this brand new distribution. Hi guys, I'm Jean from Linux.org, and let's have a look over the brand new Fedora version 41 Workstation Edition with the latest GNOME-Desktop 47 and the very new kernel Linux 6.11. So Fedora sticks to its roots. It's the distribution next to Arch Linux which has the latest software, but instead to Arch Linux it has a more stable approach. And let's have a look how this new version works and if it's doing its job well. Let's head to one of the biggest change in Fedora 41, and that's they completely ditched X11 from the distribution, from their pre-installed distribution. So Fedora 41 comes only with Wayland, the new display protocol. It's the first distribution which is ditching the old protocol X11, but if you still want to use X11, Fedora 41 has it in its repositories, so you can install it afterwards. Let us try if you really need this old display protocol, which is considered more unsafe, and it's very old. It is from the 80s, I guess, so it's older than Linux itself. And let's have a look to the biggest challenge for Wayland, and this is online meetings where we want to share our Linux desktop. So I go into a Jitsi meeting, for example, and then I head over to share your screen, and then we see here a new pop-up in Firefox. Use operating system settings. So I would say, yeah, let's give it a try. I say allow, and here we can select a single application window or the entire screen. And I would say, yeah, let's do this. Let's select the entire screen and select share here. And then we have a share icon there. And this is working quite well. And we are in Firefox. So I would say 12 points. Go to Wayland, Firefox, and Jitsi. Okay, for Jitsi it's irrelevant, but Firefox is really working well with this new GNOME version and the Wayland features with which GNOME comes. And I would say let's go a step further. Let's have a look how remote desktop software is working. And this is depending on the software you're using. For example, AnyDesk isn't capable of the Wayland desktop at the current time, as I'm informed. And also TeamViewer has some issues with it, but RustDesk is supporting Wayland in an unstable way. So let's have a look. I downloaded the latest RustDesk app image and I open this guy up. Just a small hint, if you want to use app images, just right click these, select properties here and select execute as program. And then you can just double click this like a portable app, and here we see our screen. So let's have a look if I could connect to it. I have here my other machine, which is running a Linux Mint with the RustDesk client, and I'm connecting to this one. And on Fedora, we now get this request window. So I select accept, and then we have to wait a single second, and then we see here a remote desktop pop up. Here we can select the display which we want to share, and also if we want to allow remote interaction so that our mouse can be controlled. In the default case we want to use this, so I select this one and select share here. And here we see also these icons. I very like these. It's a bit like an Android nowadays, and it gives you much more control over your Linux desktop and is just much more safer in a specific way. Yeah, Wayland is capable of controlling such things. On X11, the old protocol, every application can see every other application. So Wayland is much more sandboxed in such ways. And let's have a look if this looks good on our remote machine. And here we see, yeah, it just looks fine. I can move around some windows and it's working quite well. So I would say test also succeeded. And this is an A+ for remote screen handling and the Wayland feature on Fedora. But just a small reminder, not every application works with the new protocol, but all other big distributions are switching in about 2026, so in about 1 or 2 years, to Wayland and deprecate X11. Even XFCE is changing to Wayland, so almost every application developer has to adapt its functionalities to the new Wayland protocol, and this is working quite well in the last years. And now we are at a state where you can really use Wayland, and this looks great at the first look. And I would say, let's come to another big point, and this is called software. How is software working on Fedora? I would say it's working quite well. We have the GNOME Software Center, and we have, for example, the FlatHub right enabled and fully working if we enabled the third-party software repositories, which is a single button in your welcome screen. And if you enable this, then yeah, everything is working at a glance. And I would say it's a really nice handling, installing software, managing software, and also with the FlatHub enabled and the repositories of Fedora, which are also growing, you have access to a big variety of applications. And I didn't find any application I'm using right now which isn't supporting Fedora. So this looks great in my opinion. But also, Fedora is not as much used as, for example, Ubuntu-based distributions. So many instructions and documentation in the internet is just written for Ubuntu-based distributions. So Fedora people have to adapt some things, but with a bit tweaking, almost every software will also run very good in Fedora. Also, the update handling is quite fine. So here we see some updates for our Flatpak. So I select update all, and yeah, this is updating very fast. This is very good. And if we have some bigger updates and also some system updates, then Fedora has to be shut down, and in the reboot process it is installing its updates. And this takes a bit longer, I would say, but is much more safer and cleaner in terms of operating system functionality and stability while using your distribution. So this is a trade-off I am okay to pay for more stability in the daily use of Fedora. But Fedora also comes with a big change in their package management, and they are now supporting DNF5. So if we have a look at our DNF, we see we have DNF version 5.2, and if you don't want to use DNF, you have also available DNF4 and DNF3, so everything's good. And let's have a look how fast the latest DNF version is, and I type in my password here, and it's working really fast. Also, sudo dnf install, just install something. For example, let's have a look if FileZilla is there. Yeah, FileZilla is available, so I type it in. Here, the confirmation screen is loaded much more faster than, for example, in the DNF4 version. But also, if you compare this to the current APT version, this is much more faster and looks quite fine. Also, if we confirm the installation, it's downloaded in parallel and it is installed very fast. So yeah, maybe about 10 seconds, not even 10 seconds, I would say. After this time, everything is installed and we have a complete new software here, which we can start right away. And yeah, it just works at a glance and is much more faster. And I would personally say, yes, Flatpak is at a peak at the moment, but I would say, yeah, we will see a trend back to the original package managers because they are also developing further on. And if we have a look to DNF5, they are becoming really grown up, I would say. And in terms of technical features, they are much more desirable than a sloppy, big, slow Flatpak. So if we compare this installation to installing the FileZilla Flatpak version and the starting up process, this will take a lot more time and a lot more disk space. So my call is, yes, Flatpak has its points. It's just becoming the new big app store like Google Play Store or App Store on Apple for Linux. So all Linux distributions have a really good chance to get the latest, coolest Linux apps right on the distribution. But if we have a look to the legacy apps and to software where performance and system integration is really important, then the old traditional way with DNF, for example, or APT, is just a so simple process and in a technical view much more cleaner. So I would say, yeah, Fedora with DNF 5 is doing everything right. And as I said, I'm guessing, yeah, we will see a backwards trend back to the traditional package managers because, yeah, they are getting really, really good. How do you think about this? Just let it me know into the comments. So let's have a look to the GNOME desktop. I would say Fedora comes with a very traditional vanilla GNOME desktop, but with the latest, coolest features. We have GNOME 47 apps here. I guess all of them are now using the Advaita theme, and yeah, it just looks really crispy clean, I would say. So if we select a city, for example, Dublin, yeah, it's just looking great. Also the new weather app I really appreciate. But one single GNOME app I don't like either is the so-called system manager or task manager. These graphics are very old, and if we compare this task manager to the new task manager of KDE, here we see it. I would say KDE gets the point there. I like this KDE setup much more than this, yeah, just a bit older system monitor. But yeah, it's okay. Yeah, but if we have a look to the other apps, I would say GNOME is a really finished product, which is looking very clean, but it has some trade-offs in functionality. For example, if we have a look to the file manager and we head over to the desktop and I create a new folder in here, for example, subscribe to Linuxort. Here we have it. Yeah, we just don't see it on the desktop because GNOME doesn't support desktop icons in their default layout. You have to add some extensions for it, and this may become more cleaner for developing, but yeah, then these features are missing for some users. And also if we have a look to the file manager, I really miss the two lists mode, which we know from Linux Mint, where we can divide the file manager in the half to two views of some different folders. This comes in very handy, and Nautilus, which is the name of this file manager, doesn't have this feature. Also some more features are missing, I would say. And you see this on almost every GNOME application, that these applications are sometimes much more cleaner, but also don't have too much functionality if we compare this, for example, to the KDE platform, which is also growing very good with the latest KDE Plasma version 6. So yeah, maybe we will have also a look to this version. Just write it me into the comments if you're interested. But if we look to GNOME overall, I would say for the real power user in Linux, you won't be really happy with GNOME, I would say, because GNOME, also with many extensions, doesn't have some functionality you have in other desktops. And I would say the real Linux Pro is only using Sway or something like this. But for me, for example, I'm a heavy Linux user. I'm working with my Linux system more than 10 hours a day, and I'm just using Linux Mint Cinnamon or Debian Cinnamon. So no, I'm not using any tiling window manager. But I also know some Linux administrators with a GNOME setup, but honestly, I can't really understand this, why you can miss some very important features in my opinion. But yeah, everyone is using Linux differently, and this is very cool. And one of the biggest advantages for Linux, you are free to choose what you're using and which desktop you want to install and to work with. For me personally, I guess I wouldn't be too happy with a GNOME desktop, but if you blend this out, I would say Fedora is in the best shape it has ever been. Fedora is very solid on every point. Many feature requests or critics from the past, like the Wayland implementation or the handling with the third-party repositories, are now fixed and are really looking good. So Fedora is, for the distribution it wants to be a very state-of-the-art Linux distribution with the latest software, but stable within vanilla, easy-to-use desktop, which looks very nice and supports the latest, coolest stuff we have on Linux. Fedora is making all of these things great, and I can't criticize anything Fedora did for this release. So chapeau to the Fedora developers. You did great work in this version, in my opinion. So for which people I would recommend this version? I would say I wouldn't recommend Fedora to the bloodiest beginner on Linux, because for Fedora there isn't as much documentation in the internet, like for example as Ubuntu. And also there will be specific software apps which aren't working with the new Wayland protocol right out of the box. But I would say Fedora is really good in this, and they did a lot in the last years to it. And also the release cycle of Fedora isn't the use of a Linux desktop I would prefer, because Fedora releases a new version every 6 months, to which you should upgrade in a specific time range, because single Fedora versions aren't getting too many updates in the future. Fedora 41 is getting round about a year of software updates. After it, you have to upgrade to a newer version. And for me, that is too much manual control over my Linux distribution. So I would prefer some more legacy stable distribution, like for example Debian or Linux Mint, where I don't have the latest coolest features, but I just can work for years without doing anything too big changes to my Linux distribution. But if you are a normal Linux user who is, for example, bored of its current distribution, for example, for my remote support business, I have worked with Ubuntu 22.4, which was working really great in my virtual machine. But with Ubuntu 24.4, this were very unstable, and Ubuntu crashed sometimes, or the desktop crashed sometimes. So this was just a horrible experience. And in the end, I switched also just for a simple small virtual machine to Linux Mint Cinnamon, because it just works and I don't have to do too much to its maintenance. Linux Mint is just a very good solution for almost everyone, but yeah, it's also kind of boring. So if you are also at such a point or just want to try out the latest features, then I can highly recommend you using Fedora. I would also choose Fedora over Manjaro or Arch Linux, for example, because yeah, it's just doing everything great, and you have very new software which is quite stable. And what do you want more? So this is it. What are you thinking about the latest Fedora version which will be released in the next days? And what is your experience with Fedora distributions now? Just write it me into the comments. For me, it's a great release, and I can't really criticize anything to Fedora. They did just great work. So keep going on. And if you want to see more videos about Fedora, for example, a crash course or some other helpful videos, just write it into the comments. And if you found this video helpful, please leave a like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, because here we are releasing weekly new stuff about Linux and open source. So make sure to don't miss the next video, and have a good day. Bye.